So a lot of you have used SQL databases, but there is some point in the development that your application cannot handle, okay, not your application, but your database cannot handle the queries that are going to this application. And usually most people are approaching this problem directly with more hardware, bigger machines. And usually this is the worst case because at some point the hardware simply doesn't scale, so your database is a bigger problem. Some developers think that they can add caches between the database and the application, or cache in front of the application, so the database is not queried so often. But usually this have big problems in the structure of the software. So some guys are actually using Memcache. How many of you have used Memcache? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Redis is something like Memcache. It's an in-memory database without SQL. So the idea there is to have all of your data in the memory of your machine. And for some people, this is a problem, but it gives you the ability to have very, very fast queries and receive all of your data and at a very lightning fast rates. With SQL, even if you set up your database in the memory, again, you have the problem that databases have logs, databases have to care about data consistencies. With in-memory databases, usually what you want to have is a simple variable storage. Your variables from your language that you are using, you want to be able to use them directly from memory as they're in your programming language. With Memcache, you had only strings. So this is a very big problem because you cannot actually have a decent storage format with only strings. So Redis attacks this problem by adding a lot of new features. But I want to start with persistence. Memcache doesn't offer you persistence in the way that all of your data that is stored in the memory right now can be then loaded from a file on your machine. It doesn't do this natively. With Redis, you have logs, so everything that you enter in the Redis database is logged and stored on different places. It is something like the write-ahead log of Postgres, so it's similar in that manner. But the idea there is that you can have this log not on the same machine, but on different machine, because of the second feature, replication. With Memcache, replication is simply impossible. You have to do it in the application, not in the database. So with Redis, you simply have additional Redis server on different machine, and it's really fast to set up. You can set up master-slave replication by running the Redis server on the second machine and simply say slave of the IP of the first machine, and you're finished. You have replication. So on the second machine, you can have additional slaves, and on the second machine, you can do your logging. So your actual persistence is not on the machine that is in production, but it's like a backup server, and it stores everything on the hard drives, including in the memory. We have more data types and a lot of flexibility, as you see. The new data types are sets, lists, hashes, and very strange sorted sets. I'll show you in a bit. So This is what you have in memcache usually. You set a variable and you get the value of this variable. And here I have a few. The first two lines actually show you only the set and get functions. But with Redis, you have additional functions to work with the data that is inside the Redis database. As you can see, I have shown here increase of integers. Keep in mind that Redis detects what type of the what is the type of the variable automatically. So what you have is increase checks if this is an integer and increases the integer only if it is integer. If it is a string, it will fail. You can also have increase by some number, and you have decrease. You have a lot of more functions, but I decided that these are enough for a starter. The Redis lists are something like simple arrays. So what you get is you can push, you can pull from the array. You can have R or right or left push, and getting information from the array is actually implemented with range. It's something similar like TCLs working with arrays, because you have to say what range of the array you want. As you can see, we are pushing 3 strings in the array, and I'm getting all of them in one command. And you can also get the length of the array. You can also insert in the middle of the lists, and the list will automatically reorder. And again, as you can see, you get all the information that you want. With hashes, it's a little bit different, because hashes have to be implemented first by creating one variable, and then you have here the location is the key, and split with LX is the value. And the idea here is that you have everything stored in the hash, but if you want to retrieve anything, you can get the get all map in the get all that will get you everything from the hash, not only the keys or values, but both of them. And you can also get only the variables, the values, or the keys. The last thing is sets. I skipped the normal sets and decided that I will talk only for sorted sets. The idea here is to have something similar to arrays, but weighted arrays. So you can say that index 1 should be every time index 1, even if I insert something before it. The idea here, we add user ID and the username, then again another user ID and the username. What you see is that we have 3 different user IDs, 512, 0, and 500, that are not ordered. But when you retrieve the information, you get them ordered by the ID that you have set. The first thing is a weight. And the idea is that here I simply used the weight as a user ID because the user ID is an integer. And this way you can get ordered lists all the time. And Redis will order these lists for you without any problem. You can get reverse order also, Z reverse range. And you can get different values from the list by their score by defining the same way as you are working with arrays, but here you replace the index of the array with the score values. Okay. Redis is really cool because it is implemented in all of, okay, not all, but a lot of languages. And I'm sure that at least some of you work on most of these languages, and Redis is native for them. You simply install a library, and it works. About benchmarks, on Redis.io, you can see the benchmarks, but what I got only from the site, just for you, is the final result, 110,000 sets per second. This is because you're doing this in the memory. I have friends that have big databases, and I'm talking about more than 100 gigabytes of database. And they're storing part of these databases directly in memory because they need the performance. And with Memcache, you have a very big problem with big databases because it doesn't scale very well with more than, we have tried 16 gigabytes of database. With Redis, you don't have this problem because Redis reorders the information in the memory as it works, and you don't have the problem of retrieving and updating the information in the memory. Also, Redis doesn't have the problem of out of memory because Redis also implements virtual memory. So you can enable Redis to swap. And yeah, I know that this doesn't sound very cool, but if you have SSD drives, you can actually add swap to Redis, so your database will be able to work directly from memory, even if you don't have the memory for it. Okay, so I think I forgot one thing, authentication. Memcache doesn't have authentication at all. Redis have a very simple authentication. You can be required to give a password to the database before you connect. Otherwise, you won't be able to connect. And one other thing is that Redis also implements a separation between databases. So you actually can have multiple databases in a single Redis server instead of running multiple Memcache servers. Okay, and this is the documentation for Redis. This is the mailing group. You can find a lot of the Redis people on Freenode, and you can download Redis from GitHub. You can ask me questions now, or I think I have 5 minutes, so if someone have questions.
Any questions?
Okay, then you can contact me on my email, and thank you.
Thank you, Marian.